Thank you, Andrew. I'm Dan Friedel, and you're listening to the Learning English broadcast. We are joined now on the program by the presenter of Words and Their Stories, Andrew Smith. Welcome, Andrew. It's nice to have you here spreading your wings by producing this story.
Thanks, Dan. That gives me an idea. I'll have to check to see if we've talked about spreading your wings, which means to try something new, on past episodes.
Well, it could be the Words and Their Stories topic for next week. You never know. So, Andrew, soccer fans might have seen red cards during last year's World Cup. What are some other American phrases that use the word red?
Well, anyone who has ever taken an airplane flight very late at night across multiple time zones knows how hard it is to take a very little.
Ugh, Andrew, I hate red eyes. Don't remind me about them. So, I wonder about red flag. You say it has to do with rough water in the ocean. Do you think that is because if you get into a relationship with someone after ignoring red flags, you might drown?
Well, it means you probably won't be as happy as you'd like to be. And to use another expression, just like with a sinking ship, you might have to bail, which means to jump out or escape.
Thanks, Andrew. I guess we all should work on our swimming.
I think you might be right, especially if we have to swim upstream, but we'll save that for another episode.
Thanks again, Andrew. That's the Learning English broadcast for today. We hope your coming week is free from red flags. Thanks to all our VOA colleagues for their work on today's program. We heard from Ashley Thompson about the sweet treats that accompany the Lunar New Year. John Russell told us about designers who are reusing materials. And Dan Novak reported on the schools in the U.S. state of Washington that are not too happy with social media companies. Please join us again tomorrow to keep learning English with stories from around the world. I'm Dan Friedel.
This is VOA News. Via remote, I'm Diane Roberts. Police were involved in a standoff Sunday with a person they say could be responsible for a mass shooting that left 5 men and 5 women dead at a dance club during Lunar New Year celebrations in the U.S. state of California. At least 10 others were injured at the shooting in Monterey Park near Los Angeles, home to one of the largest Asian American communities in the United States. Earlier on Sunday morning, the Sheriff's Department said it did not know whether the attack was racially motivated. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris said the White House will provide full support to authorities in California as police search for the gunman. She turned her attention to the shooting at another event in the U.S. state of Florida.
I do want to address the tragedy of what happened in my home state in Monterey Park, California. A time of a cultural celebration. And yet another community has been torn apart by senseless gun violence.
The vice president was speaking at an event in Florida's capital commemorating the 50th anniversary of the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in Roe v. Wade. People across China are ringing in the Lunar New Year. AP correspondent Mimi Montgomery reports.
All over China, people are gathering at temples, welcoming the Year of the Rabbit and praying for good fortune. The festive celebration marks the biggest of its kind for years as families reunite and large public gatherings are allowed again after the government lifted its zero-COVID policy. According to China's Center for Disease Control, mass movement of people during the new year may cause the virus to spread, but a spokesperson says a large-scale outbreak is unlikely since about 80% of the country's 1.4 billion people were infected during the recent wave. I'm Mimi Montgomery.
For more on these and other stories, visit us at voanews.com. This is VOA News. The Russian parliament speaker has warned countries supplying Ukraine with more powerful weapons are risking their own destruction. The message follows new pledges of armored vehicles, air defense systems, and other weapons for Ukraine's military, but not the battle tanks that Kyiv requested. Russia's State Duma chairman said Sunday the West could expect a, quote, global tragedy that would destroy their countries, end quote, if they continue to supply Ukraine with powerful weapons. Somalia's government says 5 civilians were killed when al-Qaeda-linked extremists stormed a regional government office in the capital. The founder of an ambulance service told the Associated Press his team collected at least 16 wounded people from the scene at Sunday's attack. A staff member at the Banadir Regional Administration headquarters said the attack began with a suicide bombing before gunmen entered and exchanged fire with security guards. The staffer says security forces rescued most of the people inside the building. The Al-Shabaab extremist group claimed responsibility for the assault. New Zealand's ruling Labour Party on Sunday selected Chris Hipkins to replace Jacinda Ardern as its leader and the 41st Prime Minister of the country. Hipkins was the only nomination for the job, and his confirmation in a party meeting on Sunday, known as the Labour Caucus, was largely a formality.
This is the biggest privilege and the biggest responsibility of my life. I am energised and excited by the challenge that lies ahead.
Hipkins' appointment to the top job followed the surprise resignation on Thursday by Ardern. Hundreds of people gathered on the lawn of Elvis Presley's estate in the U.S. city of Memphis in Tennessee on Sunday to pay their last respects to his daughter, Lisa Marie Presley. AP correspondent Margie Zaraletta reports.
That's Billy Corgan performing at Lisa Marie Presley's funeral at Graceland. Alanis Morissette and Axl Rose also performed. Presley died January 12th. Her mother, Priscilla Presley, read a poem that her daughter had written.
She knew that I loved her. I fear I'll never touch her, but the old soul is always with me. She doesn't drift above.
Lisa Marie was laid to rest at Graceland's Meditation Garden, where her father and her son are buried. I'm Margie Zaraletta.
Lisa Marie Presley is Elvis Presley's only child. She died at age 54 after being rushed to the hospital for cardiac arrest. Via remote, I'm Diane Roberts, VOA News.
I'm Dan Friedel, and you're listening to the Learning English broadcast. You just heard Dan Novak present this week's education report. Welcome back, Dan.
Glad to be here.
I wanted to ask you more about one word in the story, nuisance. Can you explain the meaning of the word for our listeners?
Sure. Nuisance is a noun. It means something that is annoying or bothersome. For example, my cat has been loud today and is being a nuisance.
How is the word used in the story?
The story is concerned with public nuisance law. In a legal context, nuisance has a slightly different meaning. The exact definition varies by state, but generally a public nuisance is something that causes harm to the community at large. The public nuisance could be harmful to public health or damage public property. One example of a public nuisance could be pollution of waterways. Another example, which won a large settlement from tobacco companies, is cigarettes.
So, a public nuisance is something that's annoying, but on a much larger scale.
Right. A public nuisance is something that is really harmful to the public. The two school districts in the story are hoping to apply public nuisance law to the social media companies, arguing that social media content is a nuisance that is harmful to kids' mental health. But experts say it's going to be a hard case to prove.
Yes, the lawyers have their work cut out for them. Thanks for coming on the show, Dan.
You're welcome.
And now, words and their stories. from VOA Learning English. Red is nature's color of warning. Animals and plants with bright red colors are sometimes dangerous for other animals to eat. Many Western countries also use red color for warnings. Red lights at train and road crossings warn drivers to stop. Red, as well as yellow, road signs tell people to be careful in dangerous areas. And if you see a red flag on an ocean beach, that means the water is too dangerous for swimming. That brings us to today's expression, a red flag. If we say something is a red flag, that means we think it will likely cause problems or lead to danger. Let's hear how this expression is used in conversation.
Did you know that Mary has a new boyfriend?
Yes, but I'm kind of surprised at her choice.
Why?
Well, he doesn't have a job, for one thing, and he was dismissed from his last 2 jobs.
Ooh, that seems like a red flag.
It is a red flag, if you ask me.
In this example, the speakers think the boyfriend's work experience should be a warning to Mary. We can also say something is a bad sign to mean the same thing as a red flag. Many states in the United States have laws that try to prevent dangerous people from having guns. These laws are commonly called red flag laws. When someone expresses concern or a warning over something, we say the person raises a red flag. For example, if people worry that a leader is making bad decisions, they might say those decisions are raising red flags. As you can see, we use the expression red flag in many situations. We use it mainly to warn about other people's behavior rather than natural dangers. Unless you're at the beach. In that case, a red flag means you should stay out of the water. See if you can find the use of raise a red flag in this VOA Learning English article about airport security. You can also hear more examples of red flag in this English in a Minute video.